Well, thank you so much, Tom, and thanks again to everyone here at RNLA for prioritizing this topic. As Tom mentioned, I am a distinguished English fellow, education fellow with Parents Defending Education, which is a group that works with parents across the country to fight back and to reclaim public schools and to really empower parents. We file lawsuits, we file OCR complaints, we file hundreds of FOIAs to kind of reveal what's really going on in public schools. As Tom mentioned, Virginia was a really unique situation this year. Last year, President Biden won Virginia by 10 percentage points. What was so interesting about this is that Governor Youngkin was really able to tap into local education issues and to bring those to the forefront of the gubernatorial election. He consistently and clearly communicated to parents, told them, I am with you, I will work to empower you, I support you, and that certainly made education the top issue in that campaign. Interestingly enough, kind of the epicenter of the movement to kind of reclaim our classrooms really occurred here in Northern Virginia with regard to Loudoun County Public Schools. I'm sure if any of you turned on the television last year at all, you likely saw a report. It was on Loudoun County Public Schools and the incredible parental movement that was going on in that district. Loudoun County was certainly emblematic of what so many parents across the country were experiencing. Everything started in Loudoun County around the spring of 2019. There had been several complaints within the district, allegations of racial discrimination in violation of Title VI. The NAACP had actually filed a complaint with the State Attorney General's office regarding the admissions policies of Loudoun academies, which the NAACP claimed disparately impacted minority students, including African American students. So all of this was kind of in the background of what happened with Loudoun County last year. As a result of those allegations of hostile environment for African American students, Loudoun County Public Schools commissioned and hired a company out of California called the Equity Collaborative to perform essentially a systemic equity assessment. And they spent about $400,000, over $400,000 to do that. And in our work at PDE, we have noticed, right, that's a lot of times how these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives start, right? They always start with incidents of alleged discrimination, and then some type of formal action by a school district to hire an external company to come in and do an evaluation of what's actually going on in the school district. Well, Equity Collaborative certainly found that there were problems within Loudoun County Public Schools. They found that the district staff had low levels, and of course I'm quoting, of racial consciousness and racial literacy. They found that staff wanted the school to recruit and hire a more diverse workforce. They found that the school disproportionately disciplined students of color, including African American students. But they found that English language learners, Hispanic students, African American students, and Muslim students in particular were subject to racial slurs, harassment, and in some cases disparate treatment. So almost immediately after receiving the findings of Loudoun County, the school started to take steps to correct these things. They quickly changed their mascot because they believed that it had racial undertones dating back to the Civil War. They required teachers to start undergoing cultural sensitivity training and other types of professional development to kind of get at those allegations of discrimination. And almost immediately, parents and staff began expressing concerns about the actions of the school district. In several different trainings, both dealing with students and with employees of the school district, Teachers were told that they experienced privilege or experienced oppression based on the color of their skin. Teachers were told that white people always get a head start, while individuals of color are always held back, and then once they're free to move forward, they face obstacles that white people simply do not face. Right about this time, of course, the pandemic hit, and COVID-19 somewhat shut down schools. But you had all of these racial kind of tension issues in the background before COVID ever hit. So over time, the complaints grew not only from how the school was handling racial tension within the school to how the school was responding to COVID and the school's mask policies and how the school was educating children with disabilities. In June of last year, there was a notable incident, and I really think it was this incident at a school board meeting that kind of sparked the fire across the country. In June of 2021, it was the last regularly held school board meeting before the board took a couple of months off for the summer break. A very large crowd of parents signed up to attend and participate in the local school board meeting. About 250 parents signed up to speak, and about 50 comments in, the chair of the board could not get the meeting called to order. The board quickly halted public comment. They took a unanimous vote to stop public comment, and they resumed the rest of their board meeting in closed session. The sheriff's office was there. Law enforcement officers tried to remove parents from the school campus, from the actual building where the school board meeting was held. And not all parents left. There were at least 2 parents who were detained by law enforcement officers, one of which was at least ticketed for trespassing, and the other, I think, was arrested for trespassing and resisting arrest. Almost immediately, so again, this was June of 2021, and almost immediately you started to see reports across the country about similar incidents at school board meetings. Some of which, included incidents where parents were protesting local policies, some of which did likely get out of hand. But that Loudoun County incident really did spark a fire that spread very quickly, and almost immediately you began to see parents attending school board meetings across the country in very high numbers and demanding to be able to engage with their locally elected school board members. If you fast forward just 4 or 5 months, something happened at the federal level that I think really changed the landscape of how parents began to interact with their local school board members. And if we can fast forward the screen. In September of 2021, so again, this just would have been 3 or 4 months after the Loudoun County incident, the NSBA sent a letter to President Biden requesting that federal law enforcement intervene into local school board controversies. And I have some excerpts both on this screen and on the next screen for you of the letter. Essentially, the National School Boards Association asked federal law enforcement and other federal agencies to assist with dealing, and this is a quote, with the growing number of threats of violence and acts of intimidation occurring across the nation. As you can see from this slide, what NSBA said is, we ask federal government to investigate, to intercept, and to prevent the current threats and acts of violence against public school officials through existing statutes, executive authority, interagency and intergovernmental task forces, and any other extraordinary measure to ensure the safety of our children and educators, to protect interstate commerce, to preserve public school infrastructure, and to protect public campuses. The NSBA goes on to state that they are soliciting the expertise and resources of the Department of Justice, The FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Secret Service, and the National Threat Assessment Center regarding the level of risk to public school children, educators, board members, and facilities and campuses. And they specifically ask the federal government, they specifically ask the Biden administration to look at these incidents of parents engaging with school boards at public school board meetings as potential acts of domestic terrorism under the Patriot Act. Now, almost immediately, there was a significant backlash with regard to this letter. It was widely viewed as an intent to chill the free speech rights of parents across this country. It was widely viewed as an attempt to discourage parents from attending these meetings, from engaging and exercising their right to assemble, their right to free speech, and their right to petition their elected officials and express concerns or even critique how local school board members were handling these issues, everything from race and transgender to mask and the closure of public schools. Almost 5 days later, and for those of you who have worked in the federal government, you know what an amazing turnaround that is. But almost 5 days later, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, issued a memorandum directing the FBI to work with United States attorneys to convene meetings with federal, state, and tribal law enforcement to discuss strategies for how to address these threats, and specifically how to protect administrators, school board members, teachers and staff, and to really open the lines of communication to reporting these threats and assessing these threats and determining how to move forward with these threats under the Patriot Act. Garland also stated that the department would announce a series of measures that were designed to really address the rise, I'm quoting, of course, all of this, the rise of criminal conduct by parents engaging in these rights. Almost immediately, Parents Defending Education launched a massive effort across the country to get at the heart of what this was really about. Our organization filed open records requests in dozens of states, specifically seeking the records of the NSBA's board of directors to see what type of communication occurred prior to the issuance of this memorandum by Attorney General Merrick Garland. As a result of those records, what we were able to find is that there was some type of cooperation and collaboration between NSBA and the White House and or the Department of Education. Those records that we obtained through our efforts and our state open records request revealed that NSBA that the letter had been requested by possibly even Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, or even officials at the White House. And that's certainly very clear from the records that we obtained. In addition to that, in addition to kind of breaking that story about how the White House and the Department of Education were working with NSBA to issue this letter and this request, we also began surveying state associations who are members of NSBA. So just in case you're not familiar with the organizational structure of NSBA, every state has a state association, and it's that state association that is a member of the National School Boards Association. So we reached out to every state association. We asked them 3 questions. 1, whether they supported NSBA's letter. 2, whether they believed that the parents engaging with their school boards and exercising their First Amendment's rights, should be considered by law enforcement or should be investigated by law enforcement. We asked them whether they intended to refer complaints to the Department of Justice or whether they intended to refer complaints to local law enforcement. And we also asked them how they defined intimidation and harassment of public officials. As a result of PDE's efforts, and as of today's date, 21 state associations have withdrawn from the National School Boards Association. Yeah, and at least 29 of the remaining associations have distanced themselves from the letter and explicitly stated that they do not agree that parents exercising their First Amendment rights should be investigated by federal law enforcement or the Department of Justice.